So, so I had thought of some things around your career that I was going to share, but we could put a different spin on it since everyone's in transition. But I think, I kind of boiled it down in my head to what are the three most important things I think for for building your career, and unsticking it. One is putting a lot of focus on your soft skills. Your technical skills, your skills in, HR, your skills in finance or whatever, they only take you so far. I mean, yeah, you can be a great finance person among a lot of other finance people, but there's no limit to how much that makes you stand out. And what will really make the huge difference is the soft skills you bring to the table around that, your communication, your speaking, your way of engaging people, your way of creating influential contacts. And that is just as true for the search in trying to engage people. I remember someone I had been working with who he didn't quite get it. Um, he had a really good 30-second pitch, but I was at a holiday career networking group party where everyone in the room, the 100 people, get a chance to give their pitch to the room. And the way he gave his pitch was, I'm John Hadley, and I developed it, and but within 10 seconds, no one believed anything he was saying because he didn't know his message. He didn't know what he brought to the table. Um, which leads into the second point, which is learning to express your value consistently and naturally in every conversation, in the way you put out emails, in your LinkedIn profile, in your resume. Your focus in your messaging should be on how do I leave them wanting to know more. As soon as I tell them a lot, as soon as I tell them too much, I've gone too far. And this would apply, Chad, possibly to some of what's going on in your interviews, that we tend to try to give a lot of information. We focus on answering these questions and giving tons of stuff. But the most important thing I can do in the interview is get you to really engage with me, to build a relationship, to get you seeing me as someone you want to have lunch with every day. You want on the team. You see how I'm gonna fit in. Um, and so we'll tell a story where we get into all of the details of how we did something. That's the least interesting part of the story. That's the least important part of the story. The most important part of your story is, what were the challenges I had to overcome? What were the results I produced? And yeah, I'm going to tell a little bit of how I did it, but the most important is really focusing on those. Let the how I did it be like the follow-up. They say, well, that's really interesting. I want to know more. Tell me how you designed that website. Okay, now I can tell them. Or tell me how you did that marketing analytic. I can tell them because they really want to know more now. And you want to use that in all of your networking efforts. Think of what's the message that expresses the value I bring instead of just titles and duties. This whole workshop that I do on marketing headlines, which gets into this in more detail, but I can send you a link to some articles around it. But when you want to think about what's my clear, concise, and I would advocate one sentence answer to what do you do that will leave people wanting to know more.
John, can I jump in for
Yep,
one
go ahead,
second?
Ken.
Because I think that's such an important point. If right now I were to ask you, and I'm not going to, if I were to point to one of you and say, tell me what that person does and what they're looking for. My question would be, could you do that? And in some cases, maybe you can, some you can't. There's a book written by a woman named Paula Calise, Calise, called The Art of Hello. And her premise is just what John just said, that you should be able to introduce yourself in 10 words or less in a very attention grabbing, compelling, and memorable way. And it's really hard to do. But I'll give you her example is this. She introduced herself. She says, I'm Paula Calise. I'm an executive recruiter, and I fill hard to fill positions. When she goes to speak, she does speaking engagements. That's how she's introduced. She tells a story of getting a call from somebody in Europe who said, is this Paula Calise? She said, yes. He said, I hear you fill hard to fill positions. If you can get to the point where people say, boom, I know what she does, I know what he does, that's going to help you go a long way because, and it's also concise. Now they're going to ask, so tell me how you do that or tell me more. That's fine, but you got to hook them first, just like John's talking about.
Can I ask a
Go ahead,
question?
Lori. Yeah.
I see so many people who have their taglines and this, this great short, concise, which I am not learning, way to communicate. But sometimes it comes off so salesy, like
Mhm.
it's so gimmicky that
Yep.
for me it's a major turnoff. It's like, I leap the buildings in a single bound. It's like,
Yeah.
forget it. I'm so tired of those. So how do you convey it in a way that's sincere and meaningful and not come off gimmicky and salesy and insincere?
I would say one thing is the context.
Okay.
If I walked up to you at a networking event, I go, Lori, hi, I'm John Hadley, and I help job seekers who are frustrated with their search. Wouldn't that would sound salesy? You would
Yeah.
probably be backing off. But I've found that when I have a conversation with someone and they say, well, what do you do? And I say, well, I help job seekers who are frustrated with their search. It comes across completely differently. And
Yes.
because it's in context, it's an answer to a question. So that part of it is positioning things. I don't throw it out. I
Okay.
I use it in context. Some people they try for really cute, or they try for something really really high level. Um, that's kind of feels unbelievable. And
Yeah.
you're right; those don't work. So in my case, almost always I say I help job seekers who are frustrated with their search. But I have other ones I can draw on depending on where the conversation goes. And on my business card, I have another one that says, land the job and pay you deserve. So again, it's just a simple statement that speaks to a benefit of
Okay.
working with you or a challenge you solve. And that's what I would restrict it to just one. Because another thing is if I try to put two or three or four in one, you're not going to remember them all. And I'm going to kind of start crossing that line to that I'm pushing too much. So like,
And
Thank you.
it's,
yeah, go ahead, Ken. Sorry.
no, I'm sorry, it's not easy. I was just looking up, it's one of my favorite quotes. I thought it was Abe Lincoln, but apparently it's Winston Churchill. And he said, if you want me to speak for 2 minutes, it will take me 3 weeks of preparation. If you want me to speak for 30 minutes, it will take me a week to prepare. If you want me to speak for an hour, I'm ready right now. And I think the point of it is, Lori, it's not easy. And you're going to have so many iterations and you're going to get it and keep working on it, maybe forever. But I think John described it very well. And I love that context idea, concept, John. I think that's exactly right.
And I think your tone also made a big difference too.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if I'm yelling it at you, I remember I was at a conference. A friend and I we just given this session, and a guy from across the way goes, "Hey, John, so good to see you." And he comes over, and I'm like, "Oh, I have no idea who this guy is." I figured he probably was at the session, and within about 3 minutes, Dave and I realized this guy was just trying to sell us something, and had no idea who we were. It was like it was very off-putting. But let me ask you, Lori. So,
Yes.
what is one thing, one challenge that your potential client, customer, company faces that you would be able to solve?
I like to take visions and translate them into operations. I like being the number two who says, I see where you're going. Now I'm going to get the people there to make it happen.
Okay, so you're gonna bring in the people to
Yeah.
execute our vision.
Mhm. Yes.
Okay, I mean you could do something like that. I help companies bring in the people that can execute their vision.
I think it's more like translating the vision into operations. It's it's it's
Okay.
it's it's bridging the gap. Traditionally, visionaries are very good at coming up with, we're going to save world peace, but they don't know how to do it, and they're not interested in doing it. They just want to give you, this is where we want to go make it happen. There's so many amazing things to do. Just give me the one that's number one for you, and I'm going to go out and do it. And I'm going to build the structure, the people, the pathway, and make it a reality. That to
Okay.
me is like super exciting.
So I provide the company all the tools they need to translate a their most pressing vision into reality. Is that it? Or into, I don't know. I play with it. Think about
Okay.
one issue is not making it so high level that it loses its meaning. Don't be afraid to pick something very specific. No, I mean, not that this is what you go for, but
Sure,
like
sure.
I recruit, I recruit the best employees. Or what, you can make something very specific. Don't worry about trying to cover all the things you do, because there's no statement that can cover all the things you do that will not become so kind of general and meaningless that it'll lose its power. Just focus on what's something I can say that's interesting, that points to a result I provide or a problem I can solve that can lead to more conversation.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Tremendously.
Good.
So
Um,
John, I was recently reading an article that was talking about there's two things that are important in an interview. Um, One was the back question behind tell me about yourself. And this
mhm.
particular article said what they're really asking is tell me how you can help me. And then the second one, obviously, I think we've already talked about a little bit was the whole idea of trust. And you talked about you can build trust by making sure that you're telling your story in context and all of those kinds of things. But I'd be curious to see if anyone's come across this. It's not tell me about yourself, but it's tell me how you can help me. And that's how you should be introducing yourself.
um, I agree with part of it. I think the point is, yes, to tell it, to show how I can help you, how I can help this company. But it's also a chance to bring in some of the personality, bring in some of the what will build the rapport to tell my story and engage this person. I advocate a process. If you go to my website, which I'll put I guess I didn't put my contact information there. There's a search bar at the top that where you can put in a term and it'll bring up links to different articles that I've written on that. And one of them is the hero story. So if you type in HERO, it'll bring up a template for that I've used with my clients for how to tell about yourself. And I think that the key is I've got to show you a trajectory that leads from where I was to where I want to be, why should I see you, in this role. I want to bring in my passion in the story, because as a hiring manager, I want someone who's excited about this work. They're the ones who are going to put in the extra hours when needed. They're the ones who I can rely on all the time. And I want to show some key results. I don't want to talk about, let me tell you, I was a VP at Unum and I did this and I was, and then I did this and I had these duties. That's worthless. What I want to do is bring in 2 or 3 key results that I've produced that are relevant to this job, to this hiring manager. And so I'm going to weave those into my story, bringing, not the whole accomplishment story, just a simple, like a bullet or 2 sentences about an accomplishment in each job era that I choose to include in my story. And that'll deal with that question you're saying of, why should I hire them? What are they going to bring to me? Because I've illustrated these results that'll be relevant. And then I'm going to wrap it up with, well, based on all this, here are some things here's what the package I think I bring to the table and why this would be a great role. Does that help? Or does that answer
Yes,
the question?
absolutely.
Ken,
Yeah.
do you want to add anything to that?
I was actually typing when Kathleen asked the question, so I kind of missed the premise of it. I apologize.
It's about the how you tell answer the tell me about yourself, and whether it, what she was hearing was that it should all be about why I should hire you. Why should you be a fit for this job?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I think the tell me about yourself question personally should involve some personal as well as professional. Like for example, somebody who came to our country not speaking the language, not knowing the culture, had to find their way and figure things out and be a problem solver and then it's successful. I think that's a great story to tell. That's a story of perseverance. It's a story of resilience, and it's a story of somebody who's going to be successful in a high pressure role. So I think that should be part of it. And then to your point, John, I think, yes, then connecting that to the role and why that makes you a good candidate is an important part of that answer. Does that sound familiar and unique?
Also keep in mind that the interviewer, when you walk into an interviewer, I don't know you. I'm hoping you're going to be the person that I hire, because I don't want to be interviewing. I want to be getting the job done. I want someone here taking this stuff off my plate. So I'm really hoping you'll be the person, but I don't know. I'm nervous. Just like you're nervous about the interview, I'm nervous because I got to pick the right person. I got to get the right person in this job. I got to get this filled as quickly as I can. So I'm trying to draw my own picture. So this is your chance to draw the picture you want me to see and get me to relax. And I say, oh, I see what Anik brings to the table. And I'm sorry, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. And I like that. Okay, let's go on from here. And now I'm dotting the I's and crossing the T's and finding out more, as opposed to being distracted by trying to draw the picture frantically myself. So this is your chance to draw that picture for me and set the stage for how things are going to go from there forward.
Yeah, and I would say too, John, and actually, Maria, I'm talking to you a little bit about this, even though I know you were talking about resumes and how do I get to be more than just another piece of paper. But in the interview too, I'm sure many of you are familiar with STAR, or you have some process that you might use, which I highly recommend. If you don't know STAR, it's situation, task, action, and results. And I add an S at the end, and the S is, so why am I telling you this? Because I think that's where you do what John said. You paint the picture for the interviewer of you in that role. You show them how the reason why I just gave you that example, that story, is because I know in this role, you need someone in HR that's able to identify the developmental needs of the company and develop programs to address those needs. And I think this story I just told you is an example of that. But I think to John's point, you always want to try to make it easy on the person you're talking to see you in that role.
Yes. Okay, so what other issues or questions do you all have instead of me just throwing out stuff?
Well, I have
So,
another, I'm sorry.
no, it's okay,
Yeah.
Laura, you go first.
What do you do when the interviewer is not enlightened? Here's a real life example. The company that I left, we were looking to hire an entry level supply chain person. And the manager would be her first management assignment. It was her very first time that she would be interviewing somebody.
Mhm.
And I was trying to explain to her, besides the legalities of what you can and cannot ask, about behavioral questions. And so she said what she was interested in was, what does the candidate do when the FedEx package doesn't show up? And I said, that's really kind of irrelevant. What's more important is, what do they do when they have a plan and the plan doesn't work? You know, how do they recover? How do they problem solve it? So whatever the issue is, she was 25 at the time, turned to me and said, I'm wrong. Then went to our boss, who's 33, who told me she was right and I was wrong. And I said, I've hired a few hundred people, over a long period of time. I'm telling you what works. And he said, no, I'm wrong. She's right. And we have to do it her way. So if you're the candidate, how do you deal with people who don't understand passion? They don't understand how to translate when you tell your personal story or about yourself, and you're trying to explain to them all the skills you bring and why it's important to them, when they're just worried about the package showing up on time.
I think you asked some deep questions. Tell me, that's a great question. Tell me what is going to happen if the package doesn't show up on time? How's that going to affect the operation? What else could go wrong? Yeah, I mean, I just start exploring, and with the idea that we're going to get into some other issues. We're going to get into some deeper issues, because the package showing up on time you're right. It's not a big. All right, so well, here's how I deal with that. But what the bigger issue that I've seen is this. How do you deal with that? So I can try and pivot. Because you're right. Not most interviewers have never had interview training. I mean, I did all the actuarial hiring for my company for 13 years as the head of the actuarial department. I never went to an interview course. I never, I had the head of HR was a friend, and he mentored me on techniques, but that was it. It just, I kind of built it on my own. Because typically that's what happens. We don't get training on how to do that. So as a candidate, you almost have to teach the interviewer how to conduct a good interview. And if they have a really good experience, because you've turned it into a really good conversation, they're going to appreciate that. Or you can do as Miriam was suggesting, and walk away. I like that.
And sometimes that's the right choice.
Oh yeah. In fact, I always advocate.
Now I see, I appreciate your answer, John. I was just like a funny reaction, I can see, I was gonna ask something about ageism, even though I'm trying to deny that this is happening, but I could see that now, this scenario that Lori put forward, that I am making a note that as the candidate we can be the mentor, we can flip the role kind of, and like I love what you said, how in the end we will, like, we're helping hopefully that younger interviewer, and maybe that will distinguish us from the next person or the previous person. So thanks for this scenario, Lori.
Yeah, when I guess I grew up professionally in Johnson & Johnson, and the interviewing training I received was the best training I received, but it's very clear, to John's point, a lot of people don't get it. You could be in an interview where the person talks about themselves and they never actually ask you a question, or, they talk about everything around the job but never the job. And you leave that interview thinking, I didn't even get a chance to tell her about this or tell him about that. So you've got to find ways. Sometimes you got to look for your opening, and they're talking about themselves, and you might, oh, can I just interrupt you for a second? Because that reminds me of this time when I was at this company, and then you give your star story or whatever the story it is. Or, as John is suggesting and Lori is saying, somehow you have to teach them, but in a way that advances your position. But to Miriam's point, there may be a point where you think, oh my God, I could never work for this person. I don't want to. I'm going to not walk away. I'm running away from this one. And sometimes that's the best decision too.
Oh yeah, I constantly advocate if you've realized that this is the wrong job, don't belabor it. Your best strategy at that point is to say, look, I realize this is the wrong job for me. I don't want to waste your time. The interviewer will appreciate that, because the worst thing that can happen is someone keeps going. They aim, they've been coached that there's nothing to turn down until you've got the offer. So you go for the offer no matter what. And so we go through this whole process. I go through all the effort of figuring out an offer, working with HR, whatever, and then the person, it's clear that they really weren't interested, and I'm going to resent that a lot. That person is never going to be someone who is positively noted in my network. Where I had someone come in one time, and 15 minutes in the interview, he said, yeah, I don't think this is the right fit. We had a great discussion about what he really wanted. I had him go ahead and meet the rest of the team because I really liked him. And at the end of the day, my boss and I sat down and came up with the highest offer we felt we could afford to try to attract him to our operation, because he was very genuine. He was very believable. So I'm focused on the relationship. If I'm interviewing with Miriam and we have a good relationship, that's really powerful. Even if I don't get the job, she may refer me to someone else. She may remember me for a future opportunity. So I don't want to burn that by continuing to press for a job. It's clear either I'm not qualified or I don't want it.
Yeah, John, you remind me of something too. Actually, two stories. One is kind of related. When I was recruiting at a college, and this kid walks in for his interview, and he's beautifully dressed, handsome kid, your stereotypical pharmaceutical person. I used to be like that, not anymore, but I used to be like that. Anyway, I asked him, tell me about yourself. I'll give you an easy question. Just tell me about yourself. And he says, basically, I'm an underachiever. I could be doing a lot better in school. I just don't like to, put myself out too much. And I almost laughed out loud. I was like, oh, okay. And then after a minute, I said, listen, I got to be honest with you. You're not getting the job, but let me give you some advice. And then I coached him from there. But what you said about connecting with the interviewer, if you think about it, they see maybe hundreds of resumes, whittle it down. They end up bringing in 3 people, more or less. All these people meet the requirements. All these people meet the qualifications. So what's going to differentiate you? Well, I would say that it's how you connect with the interviewer, being able to understand them, where they're coming from, what they're looking for. And it's hard to do in an interview, but that's why you want to make it a conversation and not an interrogation where they're just asking you questions and you're answering them. Because at the end of the day, they may say, you know what, all 3 of these candidates were great, but man, when I talked to David, we really seemed to have a connection. I could see working with him every day. I could see him doing great things. That's my choice. So I guess my message is go into these interviews, try to relax. I understand it's a stressful situation, and try to make it into a conversation where you really can connect with the person that you're talking to.
Yeah, look for those clues. Are they, I do a lot of workshops where I do mini role plays, and I'll just do something where like I'm testing the person. So like I'll like one of the common ones I do I'll have, you know, I'll get the first person to, we're talking about how, you know, the opening of the interview, how to build relationships, how to tell your story, and I'll get someone up there. I'll say, okay, you know, okay, volunteer, and I'll start by, oh, I'm really sorry I'm late because I had to take the cat to the vet. So tell me about yourself. And 3/4 of the time, the person will immediately start telling them about themselves. 1/4 of the time, and I would say twice as many women as men pick up on it.
About the cat.
They say, tell me what happened to the cat. Are you okay? Which that is the key. Picking up on all the cues that are going on. Following, is the person leaning forward? Are they smiling, or are they leaning back? Are they reading emails or memos while they're talking to you? Are they distracted? And dealing with those things, because you need to keep that engagement level. In fact, one friend, he was interviewing for CFO position at a company, and I've heard him tell this story a number of times. I love it. He's told ahead of time, the CEO is really busy. He's very focused. He's gonna pepper you with hard questions. You're gonna have 15 minutes, and that's it. And so he goes in, and sure enough, the CEO asks him a very direct question. He answers it. Asks him a second question. He answers him. Asks him a third question. And Marty says, "Before I answer that, I just have to ask: is that an authentic Joe Namath helmet on your shelf there?" The guy lights up, and they end up spending the next 45 minutes talking about football and the Jets, and just had this great conversation. And he got hired because he focused on what was going on what could build engagement here instead of just answering the questions.
And if you have the benefit of knowing the interviewers' names, you have LinkedIn to go to, and you might find common connections, common experiences. If it's a live in office interview, or even virtual, like with John, I might ask John, "What's that picture in the back? That's interesting looking picture." And then if you want to get John talking about something, talk about his grandkid. So you read the walls, read the desk, look for opportunities like that.
Well, I want to know about all the diplomas behind Annex.
She's done all right, hasn't she?
Me too.
Yeah.
You're quite funny. But actually, one of the picture that you see there is an award from the president of France. And I actually never could show up because I was stuck at the airport for the longest time. So by the time I arrived in Paris, the party was over. I was like, oh man, I couldn't do anything to speak about how we can improve the case of organ trafficking around the world, and the detection and prevention, which I did for a very long time as a subset of managing one of the turning around one of the largest clean tech conglomerate from 12 failing bankrupt companies into a very huge consortium. But I was like, oh, well, now I'm here in Paris. Let's see what else we can do. And I bumped into some executives at some banks, and we put a plan together, a program together to have more collaboration for Europol. But all that said, I think for me, it's the networking. How do you find that networking is the most efficient way? And by the way, before I go into answering the question, I wanted to say congratulations to Lori, Kathleen, and David. You've all got a LinkedIn invite because you put your link, your profile link. I want to know all about you so we can make the world better. And Miriam and Chad, I give you an ultimatum. Please put your LinkedIn profile so we can get going. And John, I've already printed your hero story because I read it quickly and I think it's fabulous what you're putting
Oh,
together.
great.
And Zoe, I have not forgotten about you. I've actually put already in my this year, recently I created a Slack channel for my church where we have got a career networking group, and I've already promoted Beacon as well as the fabulous article from John. And of course, Mr. Ken Sher, you are part of it. So I'll have to put the link there too. But I'm trying to make sure that we're all working together. And I would like to know, I actually, although I seem like an extrovert, I have a really hard time connecting with people that are reaching out to me at times. So John and Ken, can you give us tips on how to best network towards our next job? Because I hear that the market is all about applying through networks, not through online LinkedIn and stuff like that. So
Before you give your tidbits, can I just give one piece of advice first? I used to tell myself that I hated networking, that I was a shy extrovert. And I think most people say, oh no, I'm outgoing and all this stuff. I went to a networking event in December with Harris Cuban, and he was very generous to invite me as his guest. And then he had to work the room. And I lied. I said, oh, I love networking. But you know what? When I changed my mindset, I did. And the hour it took me an Uber to get back to where I was staying, if you change your mindset, it's easier and you might actually enjoy it. So I'll let John and Ken tell you how to do it, but you have to win it in your head first before you do anything else.
That's very good advice. And here's a book that might be helpful to you. The Introvert's Edge to Networking by Matthew Pollard. So he talks about how to turn your natural introversion into an advantage in networking. I really liked his message. It resonated with a lot of what I try to teach people. I think one thing is having a goal when you go to a networking event, and not like I want to meet everyone in the room. It's like the personal goal I would have if I went to say an hour cocktail party networking event would be, I want to walk away with 3 people that I feel I would want to meet again and who I feel confident would be willing to meet with me again. And so that'll help you focus. Don't set the goal to 10 people, because that's gonna, unless you're an extreme extrovert, but set it to a number that you feel confident in, enough to keep you moving, but also enough that if I get 3 really good contacts from a meeting, I think that's a really good result. That'll move me forward. So the way I would do it is I'd have this conversation, and if I'm talking to Kathleen and I feel like I've gotten there, I feel like, yeah, Kathleen's someone I'd really like to meet with again. And I feel like we've had a good conversation, because I'm not going to talk to her for 25 minutes. She's there to network too. She's going to resent it if I talk too long. So I'm going to say, at some point, I'm going to say, Kathleen, I've really enjoyed talking with you. What I'd love to do, if you're open to it, is set up a time when we can meet for coffee in the next few weeks. Would you be open to that? If she says no, okay. She's not going to be one of the 3. I haven't gotten to that point, and that's fine, and we move on. She says yes, then I'm going to make sure to follow up with her afterwards. But now we're both free to move on, because I know I still have 2 other people I want to meet. And not everyone I talk to is going to reach that point. Some people, I'll talk to Ken and say, "Oh, guy, what a jerk! There's no way I want to meet with him again." So he's not going to go into my 3 anyway. So, but I have just a goal that I can meet and feel like I've gotten enough. And then at the end of 3, if I'm feeling it, I can keep going. Or I can say, I set out to do what I wanted to do and I'm tired. I'm going to go home. And then the second thing I would say is have some questions in your back pocket. This is one of the big fears is I'm talking to you and now there's a gap and there's this silence and it gets really awkward. So I'm hesitant to talk to this person I don't know because I don't know what we're going to talk about. I don't know if that's silent. We're going to get into that awkward silence. So I have a few back pocket questions in mind that I can use to prime the pump when that happens, or just to get the conversation going. Like, could be, what brought you to this event? What are you looking to get from this group? What do you like about this group? What do you like about your job? What made you pick that profession versus any other? What would you change if you could change anything about what you do? What would you change? Things that get them sharing about themselves. And I'll get a better conversation. So I don't know Ken, what would you add to the list?
I think that's good advice. And I think obviously there are different kinds of networking, right? So the events that John's discussing, to me, my goal is similar to John. I'm going to find 3 or 4 people that I can then connect with and have a real meaningful, deeper conversation, because you don't want to stay with one person the whole time. If you're there for an hour, you don't want to just speak with one person. And that's an interesting thing. To me, it's always a little uncomfortable too in those group settings, but that's why we're there. I walk up to 2 people talking and I just stand there until they acknowledge me, and we talk. I wouldn't do that in real life, but that's what you're supposed to do. That's what people expect you to do at a networking event. And then you get to the one-on-one. And so that's why it doesn't matter whether it's a virtual networking situation like this or it's an in-person networking. Then you can have your one-on-one conversation. I guess ideally it would be in person, but in today's world, and especially if you're a mid to late career person, being comfortable having online conversations is important. You got to be able to demonstrate that you can do that. But in those one-on-one conversations, the one thing I would say is that networking is not about asking for a job. And if that's what you do, you could probably know that you're not going to get beyond that one person, because I wouldn't recommend someone if I think, oh God, they're just going to harass this person for a job. They're going to ask them because it's uncomfortable. It's similar to what John said, networking conversations about, tell me about your career. Tell me about your current role. What do you like? What don't you like? What advice might you have for somebody who wants to break into the industry or this market? How can I help you? And is there anyone else you could introduce me to that I could have a similar conversation with? That's what you want to get out of networking. And that leads to a couple of weeks down the road, hey, I remember we were talking, there's someone I think you should meet, or you see a role at that company and you could say, hey, remember we spoke, wondering if you could get my resume in front of the hiring manager. That's how you want to approach networking. Don't approach it as, I'm going to find a job networking. Nope, you're going to find people that are going to help you find the job after that.
Yeah, you may get lucky, but once in a while you'll meet with someone who they'll say, oh, there might be something here, or I know we've got a need, let's talk about it. I mean, that's how I started my first consulting practice. I was changing careers. I decided I wanted a systems role, which I didn't have any of the traditional qualifications, but ultimately it came from, I'm at a conference, a guy asked me, what do you do? I gave him my little pitch. He said, oh, would you like a consulting assignment? And it was exactly the sort of a challenge that I'd loved to take on. But it came from having a good message and being comfortable presenting that to people.
Thank you. That helps. It's just breaking the ice, as Lori said. It's a mindset thing. And as Ken, you're suggesting, to go open-hearted, and John also with all the visionary perspective of it. This is good. So
And
I'm
as- and
almost
as-
connected with everybody. So Miriam, you're next on my list. I'm getting to you now.
Yep. And as Ken said, a networking event is just a place to kind of refresh things, to get some new people that you could chat with. If it's a networking group you go to regularly, you're going to build some relationships that are ongoing from that. But generally, a networking event is a place to find those couple of people that you're going to have one-on-ones with, because the real networking is the one-on-ones.
And by the way, the value of networking, as I think most people know, at least statistically speaking, they say 75 to 80%, and it's probably more, of jobs are landed through networking, 10 to 15% through a recruiter, and then only about 5% by randomly posting online. So you really want to try to put a majority of your time into identifying networking opportunities, participating in networking conversations. That's going to be the best use of your time.
What do we
And
do
those
when
one-on-ones give you a great chance to practice your message. So you get much better at presenting yourself and your message for when you do get to a real interview.
Mhm.
what do we do when someone like a board member is very interested in you joining something that you have zero desire to do?
Learn to say no. Very politely. And tell them what you're really interested in. Learning to say no is a really important skill. I remember years ago, I was on one of the founding members of our local educational foundation, and I was really excited about it for the first couple of years. And then the leadership was not going in the right direction, and I had started a new consulting practice, and it was too much of a time commitment. But I felt really obligated because I was one of the founding members. I'd been there all along, and I finally, went to our current chair and said, "Look, I've started this practice. I'm going to have very limited time. I'm going to need to leave the board. I'll be happy to finish out my term if you want me to, but I might not be there for very many meetings or do much outside, or I can turn my resignation in right now." I felt so good walking away from that because it wasn't feeding my passion anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a way to, I mean, if you can figure out a way to say no without saying no, like, oh my gosh, that sounds like such a great opportunity. Unfortunately, I'm doing this right now, or then maybe that was a great example. I find at work situation, when people ask you to do things you don't want to, you might say, well, love to help you with that. If you can get me this, or if you can maybe find an opportunity for me here, I might be able to work that into my schedule or something. It's figured out a way to say no without actually coming right out and saying no. Miriam,
just be careful not to give too much of a reason, because the more you go into the reasons you can't do it, the more it starts to sound like an excuse instead of a reason. And when I give I can't do anything in person. Oh, no problem. We will do that, and we'll let you be the one remote person. Oh shit! I just stuck myself in it. So be careful about the excuses.
Well, a friend of mine once said that if she invites you to do something and you say no, she's perfectly fine. But if you give her an explanation, she judges the explanation.
Yes.
So it's better to just get out or ask about the cat.
Right.
Now, protest it too much is definitely not the way to go. Miriam, you've been very patient.
You're on mute.
Yeah. I'm just can't do the math now. Yeah, I don't know if the group is interested in this question. It's somewhat related to ageism in light of networking. I am curious to hear from all of you what your experience is. Well, I guess maybe more generally. So I've been in transition for a while, and I have not yet reached the situation of getting to the interview. But I'm wondering, most of the both, what is your experience? Most of the hiring managers and and HR, are they much younger or just a little bit younger? I mean, in which demographics? And that leads me back to networking. I have done this past fall some networking through mostly PS, I believe, and some things related. So I'm French, related to the French Chamber of Commerce, and some other things that I can't quite pinpoint. And I am seeing few younger folks in in-person networking. So I'm kind of just trying to get a feel for like what suggestion or advice folks have. And what do you see, out there in real life or in the market in terms of who's hiring and how do you tap the middle generation? I don't know, I guess if they're millennials or what, I leave it to that.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I would say it's you're probably going to come across younger people most of the time. I know, like when you get an interview and when you get a phone screen, typically it's an entry-level HR person, who could be my child interviewing me, and it's hard to get over that psychologically, that I've got to convince this kid to give me a chance. That can be frustrating. But I still think it's a matter of connecting. And I think if you're asking the right questions to these people, as you're talking, so what do you do? Tell me about that. Wow, what do you find to be the biggest challenge? Or what are you working on today? I'm curious. And then as an experienced person, if you're able to give advice, even career advice, or how to work with colleagues better, or looking maybe for an opportunity to help them out, and by helping them might lead to an opportunity for them to help you out.
Yeah, every networking group is going to be different too. I mean, there's some that are more focused on senior levels. I mean, Beacon tends to have a lot of senior level, mid to senior level people in it. So Beacon events, you would come across more, or professional groups, professional associations, or groups associated with what you're going after. For instance, there's financial executive networking group, there's technology executive networking group, there's strategic executive networking group, where it's people at a certain level, because those groups tend to be, you have to be in the 100,000 and up and a certain title level. So you get more people who are mid to advanced career when you go to meetings like those. So that'd be something to do as well. Did Kathleen still have a question? I hadn't noticed your hand up as we were talking. I apologize.
Oh, no worries. And then you guys all froze, so I had to come back in.
Yeah, it's
So
very cold here.
funny. Switch gears just a minute, but we all are going to land the job of our dreams and be happy, ever after, or not. So my question is, say we all do land, how do we set ourselves up for success in that new role?
Great question. That was something I was going to get into if we were doing more of the unstick your career.
I read your mind.
Yeah. Because at the very beginning, when you first show up for the job, people, there's this excitement level initially that there's this new person, and people are immediately putting you in one of three buckets. The person that I should watch. This person has something something interesting. They're going to contribute a lot. I want to watch them. There's this is someone, another good person. I don't really have to pay much attention. And there's this is someone I should avoid. Now, you never want to be in that last bucket, but you really don't want to be in the middle bucket either. You want key people throughout the company to know who you are, have some idea of the value you bring, so that they're keeping you on their radar screen. And that has a lot to do with your messaging and creating a plan right from day one to find out who are the key players, who are the people I should know, not just in my operation, but across the organization. And then making a plan to get in front of each of those people in some way, one-on-ones. Hey, Kathleen, I'd love to get to understand your operation and how it relates to mine. Could we sit down and talk? Whatever you're going to do, but get known by all of those people very quickly, because they will very quickly get to the place of, well, okay, new employee, there are other new employees here and they don't pay any attention anymore. And another thing is, even before you start, you should be doing some things to show how excited you are. Don't wait until the day you show up at work. Call that hiring manager before, set up a meeting to talk about, hey, is there anything I can do to get up to speed more quickly? If you have a critical meeting that's going on, I'd be happy, even though I haven't started yet, I'd be happy to join in if you think it'd be value. What do you think what should I do between now and when I start to start adding value on day one? So they see that you are excited. They see that, you want to be that top performer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on the other side, close out your search properly. Make sure that you reach out to every single person that helped you in any way in your search. Some of them you might do it by, I wouldn't advise blast emails, but by a common email that you're sending to. But the most important ones, you want to make a personal outreach, a phone call, whatever, to let them know, hey, thanks so much for your help. I've landed. Here's where I'm going to be. If anything, I want to stay in touch. Let me know if there's ever anything I can do to help you. So you make sure that you don't let that network founder because you've started in the new job. Sorry, Ken.
Yeah, no, and I would say, actually, to add to that too, John, even people you reached out to that didn't get back to you, I would still send them a note. Hey, I know we were trying to connect, even though you're thinking, you jerk, I can't believe you didn't connect. But just want to let you know I landed here, and I'm really excited about that position. Would still love to connect with you. Hopefully we'll get the opportunity, because you work so hard to build your network. You don't want to let it go. And if you have an opportunity to expand it like that, you should. But what I was also going to say, Kathleen, to your answer is, good thing to do in an interview. Again, I believe that, if again, thinking it's down to 3 people to interview. So they interview one person today, it's Tuesday. You know what, I'm busy, I can't get the other person. They're going to interview next Monday. And then the last person's going to interview Thursday. And then the following week, we're going to all get together, all the interviewers, and we're going to talk about the candidates and decide who we're going to pick. Chances are they took notes and et cetera. But how can you differentiate yourself? And I believe having some kind of leave behind for them, whether it's a very small, I've got these binders, like a 6 PowerPoint slide presentation of just highlights of your career, and maybe you're, very not dense, just bits and pieces here and there. But included in that might be a 30, 60, and 90-day plan. And so you can let them know, here's what I would do if I came on board. And those first 30 days for me personally would be about meeting all the key stakeholders, learning about the business, certainly acting on urgent things that need to be acted on. But you don't want to go in like, hey, there's a new sheriff in town, we're changing everything, because that's a bad way to start. But so the purpose of the 30, 60, 90-day plan is, first of all, then when they get together to review all the candidates, they have something. Oh yeah, I remember Kathleen. She's got this great approach that she's going to take if we hire her. And then certainly when you start the job, you might tweak it with the more knowledge that you have. But I think it serves a couple of purposes that way.
Thank you. And I'm sure others might have a comment, but I just wanted to go back to Miriam's question too. I agree with you. I don't see the young people out networking, but yes, they are hiring managers. And so it is a little bit tricky to try to figure out how to connect with them when, things that are important to us, that happened before they were born. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Can I
Yeah,
follow up?
thank you. I mean, for me, like, I'm sorry, Lori, for me, like, I agree with what John replied, John and Ken. I personally love being around young people. And so I'm really good, I think, at connecting, like what you guys said, like, I don't come from the teaching background, so I don't think I'm lecturing. I'm just like, I'm really genuinely interested. I mean, I just think I reflect back like, man, if I had knew all those things, maybe I would have done a different career. I mean, I just like, it really sparks my curiosity and my interest. And so, yeah, my question was exactly that, like I'm just kind of like figuring out like how do you guys really develop those relationships ahead of being in front of the interviewer, and as the years pass, they're going to be more into those decision-making roles. And if they're not in the networking things, then where are they and how are we going to know them? I mean, eventually it's going to be your kids and your nephew and nieces who are going to hire me. So this is why I'm getting to know you and so on and so forth. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, again, LinkedIn, I think, is a great opportunity. If you connect with people, you follow them, if they post, comment on their stuff, build an online relationship with them if you can. And you'll continue to learn about them. And by the way, your comment, Miriam, that you're just genuinely curious. I mean, that's what better way to connect with people. That's going about it with a sense of curiosity. It's great.
I find the volunteering too and getting involved in the communities. I'll post a lot during the holidays because I didn't want to be feeling all blue, although I dress in it. I actually decided to do pet sitting. And one of my new clients had this horrible Australian cattle dog that was biting them, like the whole family had like scars all over. I get there and I'm just thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, I'm pet sitting, I'm an executive. What's going on with me? But I ended up with that client going from a 30-day visit, $30 visit to a $2,000 a day deal where not only did I start taking care of his house, his family, his finance, and then with the kids, they decided to, a bunch of 19 years old show up at 11:30 at night at the house, and I am cooking a French dinner for them, and we are having the greatest time. And interestingly, one of the kids that was part of that dinner at Crazy Hours ended up starting a company, and I'm on the board of it. So
Right?
I was like, man, this happened. And this kid is like 22 years old. His friends were 19s and all that stuff. So you never know what you're going to do. But to me, it was more doing charitable type of activities initially by doing pet sitting for people that have to go meet their families over the holidays. And then it turned out that a good deed turned out into something that can be very a good adventure professionally.
That's
So,
great.
who knows?
Well, we're just about at time.
Can I
and
ask
I
one
promise
real-
we did.
Can I ask one really,
Yeah.
really quick question?
Go ahead.
If we go, Ken, there's 3 candidates, 3 interviews, they're separated out. Which one do you take? And you get the first choice. Do you go first? Do you go second, or do you go third?
Yeah, I don't know.
If I know there are only 3, I'm not too concerned about which of the 3. I my general preference is to go earlier and really set myself apart. But if there were a lot, I'd make more difference, I would say. But I'm going to look for something unique. I'm going to be digging into the challenges, trying to find that unique thing that I bring that that isn't in the job description, that isn't that they're looking for, that they haven't bothered to lay out, because that's what's going to make me stand out from the others.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're right at time now. We as I mentioned, we recorded this. I think it would be fair to share it with everyone who came. There's one person who had registered, really wanted to come and couldn't make it. So if it's all right with everyone, we would share it with Susie as well. We normally put the recordings out on the Beacon channel, but I leave it up to all of you. If anyone is uncomfortable with that, then we will only share it with this group and Susie. So is anyone
Susie's wonderful.
Yeah. Is
She's
anyone
great.
uncomfortable with this being shared beyond that? Since it was all your discussion.
And just to say, if you are, it's no problem. You're the only
Yeah.
person, doesn't matter, then we won't do it.
Yeah, and you can privately message me that. You don't have to like say that in front of everybody if you want to also.
That's true. You can privately message Zoe if you're uncomfortable telling us that you're the one who's going to prevent it. No. But it's not a problem. We're fine if you do not want it shared beyond the group. Plus Susie. So thanks everyone for coming. I think we had a
John.
really good discussion. And everyone
Can you share your
the
can you
cat.
share your marketing headlines with us as well, or have Zoe send the marketing headlines?
Sure, I can send you something on marketing headlines.
Okay, sorry for the interruption. Go ahead.
So anyone who is not a Beacon member, I would strongly urge you to consider it, because it is a really good networking group. You're going to meet a lot of really good, helpful people and executives across a wide range of industries. The small group networking sessions that Zoe mentioned are great. I haven't been to one for a while. I used to go to every one of them, but now one of them conflicts with my tennis night, and one of them conflicts with taking my grandson. So at some point I'll get back into them, but they were really good sessions. So Zoe, anything you wanted to say before we close out?
Just thank you all for sharing your background, your questions, and being a little bit vulnerable. And to Ken, John, and everyone else here, actually, you all helped each other with different tips. So thank you all for attending, being vulnerable, sharing, and hopefully you learned something or just have a different perspective going back into your job search.
Beacon is a national community of senior-level business leaders committed to sharing, helping, and learning. To find out more, go to beaconforlife.org.